The conference room fell silent as General Morrison traced an intricate hand signal in the air, his movements precise and deliberate as he demonstrated the classified communication method to the assembled brass. To the colonels and majors gathered around the polished mahogany table, it was another briefing on special operations protocols, important but routine military business. But when Morrison smugly declared that only Navy SEALs know this particular signal, none of them noticed the way his secretary, quietly organizing files in the corner, suddenly looked up with sharp recognition. And when Samantha Wells calmly returned the exact same signal without hesitation, adding the proper response sequence that even Morrison had forgotten, the room went dead silent as everyone realized the woman who'd been serving them coffee and scheduling their meetings for 18 months was someone whose true identity would change everything they thought they knew about classified operations. Welcome to those who left a trace, where ordinary people carry the most extraordinary secrets. Before we dive into this incredible story that will leave you speechless, tell us in the comments what city you're watching from today. And if you believe that everyone deserves respect no matter how they appear on the surface, hit that subscribe button and join our community that honors the hidden warriors among us. The morning briefing at Fort Braxton Special Operations Command began like dozens of others, with senior officers filing into the secure conference room as Samantha Wells arranged documents and prepared the multimedia equipment that would support the day's presentations. At 29 years old, she stood 5 feet 5 inches tall with shoulder-length auburn hair that she kept professionally styled but never flashy. Her brown eyes held a quiet efficiency that the military brass attributed to administrative competence, never suspecting the depth of tactical training and special operations experience that lay behind that focused gaze. Samantha wore the standard attire of civilian administrative personnel: navy blue blazer over a white blouse, black slacks, and comfortable flats that allowed her to move efficiently through the command center while managing the complex logistics that kept special operations planning running smoothly. Around her neck hung the security badge that marked her as clear personnel, though none of the officers knew the true extent of her clearances or the classified operations that had earned them. To the generals and colonels who worked at Fort Braxton SOCOM headquarters, Samantha was simply Wells, the civilian secretary who had been assigned to General Morrison's staff 18 months earlier. She managed schedules, coordinated briefings, and handled the administrative details that allowed senior officers to focus on operational planning. Her work was competent and professional, the kind of reliable support that military leaders took for granted. What none of them knew was that Samantha's understanding of special operations and military protocol had been developed during 8 years as a Navy SEAL, including 5 years conducting direct action missions in some of the world's most dangerous environments. Her expertise with classified procedures, tactical operations, and special warfare had been earned through missions that tested the limits of both physical capability and operational security. The transition from elite naval special warfare operator to civilian administrative assistant had been one of the most challenging periods of Samantha's life. 18 months earlier, a classified mission in Southeast Asia had gone catastrophically wrong. Not due to operational failure, but due to political complications that required the immediate extraction and identity protection of all personnel involved. The mission had been successful from a tactical standpoint. The high-value target had been eliminated, intelligence had been recovered, and no American casualties had occurred. But the diplomatic fallout had been severe enough to require that all participants be reassigned to positions that would obscure their involvement in operations that officially never happened. For Samantha, this had meant separation from SEAL Team 3 and reassignment to a civilian administrative position within the special operations community. Her service record had been classified at levels that made it inaccessible to routine personnel inquiries. Her combat decorations had been placed in SEAL files, and her very existence as a special operations veteran had been officially denied by the Department of Defense. The psychological adjustment had been brutal. One day, she was leading direct action missions against terrorist strongholds in hostile territory, making split-second decisions that could save or cost American lives. The next day, she was scheduling meetings organizing files, and serving coffee to officers who had no idea they were being supported by someone whose combat experience exceeded most personnel in the building. But Samantha had approached her civilian assignment with the same discipline and professionalism that had marked her military career. If the needs of national security required her to serve as a secretary, then she would be the most competent secretary in the special operations community. Her administrative work became a form of service that honored her oath of enlistment, even when no one understood the sacrifice it represented. General Robert Morrison embodied the attitude that most senior military officers held toward civilian administrative staff like Samantha. At 54 years old, Morrison was a career Army officer with 32 years of service and the kind of professional confidence that came from commanding special operations forces in multiple combat zones. He viewed civilian support personnel as necessary but unremarkable components of military operations, people who handled important administrative functions but lacked the specialized training that marked true warriors. That Morrison's military career had been distinguished but conventional. He had commanded infantry units during the Iraq War, served multiple tours in Afghanistan, and worked his way up through staff positions that prepared him for senior leadership in Special Operations Command. His knowledge of SEAL procedures was theoretical rather than experiential, gained through briefings and coordination meetings rather than actual participation in naval special warfare operations. This gap between theoretical knowledge and practical experience would prove significant during the morning's briefing, though Morrison himself was unaware of the limitations in his understanding of SEAL communication protocols. Wells, make sure the classified materials are properly secured before the briefing begins, Morrison instructed as he entered the conference room with his characteristic commanding presence. His tone carried the casual authority that had become routine in his interactions with administrative personnel. Samantha nodded professionally and continued her preparation of the secure conference materials. Yes, General Morrison. All classified documents have been logged and distributed according to appropriate clearance levels. Morrison examined the briefing setup with the critical eye of someone who understood that operational security could determine mission success or failure. Despite his dismissive attitude toward civilian staff, he had to admit that Samantha's administrative work consistently met the demanding standards required for special operations planning. Her attention to detail was exceptional. Her security procedures were flawless, and her coordination of complex briefing materials was more efficient than most military personnel could achieve. Morrison attributed this competence to civilian professional training rather than military experience, never suspecting that Samantha's performance reflected years of operational discipline and security awareness. The topic today is advanced communication protocols for deep cover operations, Morrison announced to the assembled officers as they took their seats around the conference table. We'll be reviewing signals and procedures that our most sensitive units use for coordination in denied environments. The officers filing into the secure conference room represented the leadership of America's Special Operations Community. Colonel James Patterson served as a SOCOM operations officer with responsibility for coordinating complex missions across multiple service branches. Major Susan Chun was the intelligence liaison officer, providing analytical support for operational planning. Lieutenant Colonel Michael Rodriguez commanded the Joint Special Operations Training Center, developing curricula that prepared operators for the most challenging missions. Each of these officers possessed extensive military experience and high-level security clearances, but none of them had direct experience with Navy SEAL operations. Their knowledge of SEAL procedures came from inter-service coordination and joint operational planning, rather than actual participation in naval special warfare missions. Samantha took her position at the side of the room, where she could manage the audiovisual equipment and take notes without interfering with the classified discussion. Her presence was so routine that most officers barely noticed her, but her professional demeanor masked an intense interest in the operational details being discussed. Her position as Morrison's secretary provided her with access to planning discussions that few people outside the special operations community ever witnessed. She heard briefings on counterterrorism operations, hostage rescue planning, and direct action missions that represented the most sensitive aspects of American military operations. Her security clearances allowed her to process classified information, but her administrative role meant that she was expected to remain silent during operational discussions. This enforced silence had been one of the most difficult aspects of her transition to civilian employment. During her SEAL career, Samantha had been an active participant in operational planning, contributing tactical insights and procedural recommendations based on her combat experience. Her transition to passive observation of planning processes had required tremendous psychological adjustment. What Morrison didn't realize was that Samantha's administrative efficiency incorporated security awareness and operational knowledge that she had learned during SEAL training. Her understanding of classified procedures, operational security, and special warfare was based on years of conducting the very missions that were being planned in these briefings. Her filing systems reflected the operational security procedures she had learned during military service. Her scheduling incorporated tactical considerations that civilian administrators wouldn't understand. Her preparation of briefing materials demonstrated attention to detail that exceeded normal administrative standards because she understood the life and death importance of accurate information in special operations. As Morrison began his presentation on communication protocols, Samantha observed the senior officers with the analytical eye of someone who understood both the theoretical and practical aspects of special operations. Her administrative position gave her unique insight into planning processes, while her combat experience allowed her to evaluate the tactical soundness of proposed operations. The first protocol we'll examine is the emergency extraction signal used by SEAL Team 6 during deep penetration missions. Morrison explained as he activated the presentation display. This particular signal sequence is known only to the most elite operators and their immediate support personnel. Samantha's attention sharpened as Morrison began discussing procedures that she had used during actual combat operations. SEAL Team 6 communication protocols were among the most closely guarded secrets in American military operations, and she was surprised to see them being discussed in a joint briefing rather than a naval special warfare-specific meeting. Morrison demonstrated a complex series of hand gestures, each movement precise and deliberate. The sequence involved specific finger positions, timing intervals, and spatial relationships that conveyed detailed information without requiring verbal communication. This signal indicates mission compromise, immediate extraction required. Morrison continued his explanation. The beauty of this system is its exclusivity. Only Navy SEALs who have conducted actual deep cover operations know the complete sequence. Samantha recognized the signal Morrison was demonstrating, but her operational experience told her that his presentation was incomplete. The emergency extraction protocol involved not just the initial distress signal, but also a verification sequence and response protocol that confirmed the authenticity of the communication and the identity of the requesting operator. Morrison's demonstration showed only the basic distress signal, without the critical authentication elements that prevented hostile forces from using captured SEALs' knowledge to compromise extraction operations. This was exactly the kind of incomplete information that could get people killed if it was used to train support personnel who might be involved in actual rescue operations. Colonel Patterson, the SOCOM operations officer, studied Morrison's demonstration with professional interest. "General, how do we ensure that support personnel understand these signals without compromising operational security?" Morrison's response reflected his confidence in the exclusivity of special operations training. "Colonel, that's exactly the point. We don't teach these signals to support personnel. Only operators with actual mission experience learn the complete sequences. It's a built-in security measure." Samantha felt a flash of professional concern at Morrison's response. Support personnel, pilots, communication specialists, intelligence analysts, and extraction teams needed to understand at least portions of SEAL communication protocols to provide effective support during actual operations. Complete exclusivity could compromise mission effectiveness and operator safety. Her SEAL training had emphasized the importance of coordinated operations involving multiple specialties and service branches. Successful missions required that everyone involved understood their role and had access to appropriate information. Morrison's approach of complete information restriction could create dangerous gaps in operational coordination. The response to this emergency extraction signal is equally classified, Morrison continued, demonstrating a second sequence of hand gestures. "But I'll admit, gentlemen, that even I don't remember the complete response protocol. These signals are so specialized that only active SEAL operators maintain current proficiency. Morrison's admission revealed a gap in his knowledge that Samantha found professionally concerning. Emergency communication protocols were critical for operator safety, and incomplete understanding could compromise missions and endanger lives. The response sequence that Morrison was attempting to demonstrate was actually more complex than he realized. It included not just acknowledgement of the extraction request, but also verification of the responder's authority to coordinate rescue operations, confirmation of extraction resources availability, and timing coordination for the actual rescue attempt. Samantha had used these exact procedures during a mission in Somalia where her team had been compromised and required immediate extraction under hostile fire. The complete protocol sequence had enabled their extraction team to verify their identity, coordinate timing, and execute a successful rescue despite enemy attempts to interfere with their communications. Major Chun, the intelligence liaison officer, raised her hand with a question about operational implementation. General Morrison, what happens if an extraction signal is incomplete or incorrectly transmitted? How do support teams verify authenticity? Morrison paused in his presentation, clearly struggling with a question that exceeded his theoretical knowledge of SEAL communication procedures. Major Chun, that level of detail would require input from actual SEAL operators with current mission experience. The pause in Morrison's presentation created an opportunity for him to demonstrate his knowledge, while simultaneously revealing its limitations. His next statement would trigger events that would completely transform everyone's understanding of the personnel in the room. The truth is, gentlemen, Morrison said with evident pride in his special operations knowledge, only Navy SEALs who have actually conducted deep cover missions know these signal sequences completely. It's the kind of exclusive knowledge that separates real operators from everyone else in the military. Morrison's emphasis on exclusivity and his obvious satisfaction with demonstrating specialized knowledge created an atmosphere of military elitism that Samantha found both familiar and professionally irritating. Her SEAL training had taught her that operational security was serious business, not an opportunity for showing off classified knowledge to impress colleagues. The culture of special operations emphasized that classified procedures were tools for saving lives and completing missions, not status symbols for demonstrating superior access to sensitive information. Morrison's presentation style suggested that he viewed SEAL protocols as opportunities for professional advancement rather than critical operational capabilities. In fact, Morrison continued with growing confidence, I'd wager that no one else in this room, officers or support staff, would recognize this emergency extraction sequence, much less know the proper response. Morrison's challenge was clearly rhetorical, designed to emphasize his unique access to classified information and establish his credibility as an authority on special operations procedures. He looked around the room with evident satisfaction, confident that his demonstration had impressed the assembled officers with his specialized knowledge. Morrison repeated his demonstration of the emergency signal, this time with even more elaborate gestures designed to emphasize the complexity and exclusivity of SEAL communication protocols. His performance was clearly intended to impress the assembled officers with his access to classified special operations procedures. This is the kind of training that takes years to master and even longer to earn the right to learn. Morrison concluded his demonstration. It's what makes Navy SEALs the elite of the elite. Samantha had listened to Morrison's presentation with growing concern about the incomplete and occasionally inaccurate information he was providing about SEAL communication protocols. Her professional standards and operational security training compelled her to correct dangerous misinformation that could compromise future missions. The specific signal sequence Morrison had demonstrated was indeed used for emergency extraction requests, but his presentation contained several critical errors that could prove fatal if the information was used to train personnel who might be involved in actual rescue operations. First, Morrison had omitted the verification elements that authenticated the identity of the requesting operator. Without these elements, hostile forces could potentially use captured SEAL knowledge to request extraction resources and ambush rescue teams. Second, Morrison's demonstration of the response protocol was incomplete and partially incorrect. The proper response sequence included not just acknowledgement, but also resource confirmation and timing coordination that were essential for successful extraction operations. Third, Morrison's emphasis on exclusivity was operationally dangerous. Effective SEAL operations required coordination with support personnel who needed to understand at least portions of communication protocols. Complete information restriction could compromise mission effectiveness and operator safety. Without thinking about the consequences for her carefully maintained cover identity, Samantha responded to Morrison's emergency extraction signal with complete and correct response sequence. Her movements were fluid and precise, demonstrating not just knowledge of the signal, but the kind of muscle memory that came from using these procedures under actual combat conditions. The response sequence included verification elements that Morrison hadn't demonstrated and timing protocols that marked her as someone with extensive operational experience. Samantha's response was executed with the automatic precision that characterized operators who had used these procedures under stress. Her finger positions were exact, her timing was perfect, and her spatial relationships demonstrated the kind of training that could only be acquired through intensive special operations instruction. The conference room fell completely silent as every officer processed what they had just witnessed. Morrison's face drained of color as he recognized that his secretary had just demonstrated classified knowledge that should have been impossible for civilian administrative personnel to possess. Colonel Patterson was the first to break the stunned silence, leaning forward with evident fascination and growing suspicion. "Wells, where did you learn that response sequence?" Lieutenant Colonel Rodriguez stared at Samantha with new understanding, noting details about her bearing and demeanor that suddenly made sense in the context of military training. "Wells, that signal sequence is classified at the highest levels. Only personnel with special operations experience would have access to that information." Major Chin studied Samantha with analytical interest, processing the implications of her demonstrated capabilities. "Wells, your response was executed with a kind of precision that suggests extensive training and practical experience with these procedures." Morrison struggled to process Samantha's demonstration while grappling with the implications of her knowledge. His comfortable assumption about the exclusivity of SEAL communication protocols had been shattered by his own secretary's casual display of expertise that exceeded his own understanding. "Wells, those signals are classified at the highest levels," Morrison said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Only SEAL operators with actual combat experience would know the complete sequences." Samantha realized that her professional instincts had irrevocably compromised her cover identity, but operational security concerns took precedence over personal considerations. Morrison's incomplete and partially incorrect presentation could endanger future operations and operator safety. "General Morrison," she replied with calm professionalism, "you were providing incomplete information about emergency extraction protocols. The sequence you demonstrated was missing critical verification elements that are essential for operational security." Morrison's response reflected his shock at being corrected by someone he had viewed as administrative support. "Wells, what you just demonstrated requires years of specialized training and operational experience that civilian personnel don't receive." Samantha maintained her professional composure while addressing the security concerns that had compelled her to reveal her capabilities. "General, operational security requires accurate information. Incomplete or incorrect procedures can compromise missions and endanger personnel." Colonel Patterson stood up from the conference table, his expression reflecting growing awareness that the room's dynamic had fundamentally changed. "Wells, General Morrison is correct about the classification level and exclusivity of these procedures. The only way you could possess this knowledge is if you have special operations background that we haven't been informed about." The moment had arrived when Samantha's 18 months of silence would end and her true identity would be revealed to colleagues who had known her only as administrative support. She met Patterson's gaze with the steady confidence that had marked her military service. "Colonel Patterson," she replied, I possess that knowledge because I spent 8 years as a Navy SEAL, including 5 years conducting direct action missions that utilize these communication protocols in actual combat situations. The silence that followed was profound as every officer in the room processed a revelation that Morrison's secretary was claiming to be a former SEAL team operator with combat experience that likely exceeded most personnel in the building. Morrison felt his understanding of reality shift as he struggled to reconcile the woman he had known as an administrative assistant with a combat veteran who was claiming elite special operations credentials. Wells, are you saying you're a former SEAL team operator with actual mission experience? Samantha straightened to attention with the bearing that had marked her naval service. That's correct, General. Petty Officer First Class Samantha Wells. SEAL Team 3, 8 years of active duty, including multiple combat deployments in Iraq, Afghanistan, Somalia, and classified operations in Southeast Asia. The revelation explained everything about Samantha's exceptional administrative performance, her flawless security procedures, her sophisticated understanding of operational planning, and her obvious familiarity with classified procedures that civilian personnel shouldn't understand. Major Chen was the first to verbalize what everyone was thinking. Wells, if you're really a former SEAL with combat experience, why are you working as a civilian secretary instead of in a position that utilizes your specialized training and experience? Samantha's response required her to reveal information about her transition from military service that she had kept classified for 18 months. Major Chun, my separation from active duty involved operational security requirements related to classified missions that necessitated my reassignment to civilian administrative positions within the special operations community. Colonel Patterson studied Samantha with new understanding, recognizing that her administrative competence had been the result of military discipline and operational experience rather than civilian professional training. Wells, your performance as General Morrison's secretary suddenly makes perfect sense. You were applying SEAL standards and procedures to administrative duties. Lieutenant Colonel Rodriguez nodded in agreement. Wells, your attention to detail, security awareness, and operational understanding now makes sense in the context of special operations training. You've been functioning at levels that exceeded normal administrative requirements because you were drawing on combat experience. Morrison realized that his organization had been dramatically underutilizing a valuable resource while simultaneously maintaining appropriate security protocols. Wells, if your claims are accurate, you possess tactical knowledge and operational experience that could significantly enhance our planning capabilities. The revelation of Samantha's identity triggered immediate security protocols as the assembled officers grappled with the implications of discovering a former SEAL operator working in their administrative structure. Morrison activated secure communication systems to verify Samantha's claims through appropriate military databases. Wells, I need to verify your service record through Naval Special Warfare Command, Morrison announced as he initiated the authentication process. If your claims are accurate, this raises significant questions about personnel assignments and the utilization of specialized expertise within our organization. Samantha understood the verification requirements and cooperated fully with the security procedures that would confirm her identity and service record. General, I'll provide whatever documentation or testimony is required to authenticate my service record and current assignment authorization. The transformation was both professionally gratifying and personally challenging for Samantha. After 18 months of hiding her true capabilities, she was finally able to contribute her specialized knowledge to missions that could benefit from her experience. But the transition also meant abandoning the security and anonymity that her cover assignment had provided. General Patricia Williams, commander of Joint Special Operations Command, personally flew to Fort Braxton to meet with Samantha and discuss her future assignment options. Williams was 53 years old, a career officer who understood the value of experienced operators in both combat and planning roles. Petty Officer Wells, General Williams began as they met in a secure conference facility. Your service record shows exceptional performance during 8 years of special operations, and your recent contributions to operational planning have been outstanding. We need to discuss how best to utilize your expertise moving forward. Samantha straightened to attention as she prepared to discuss her future service opportunities with one of the most senior officers in the Special Operations community, General Williams. I'm prepared to serve in whatever capacity best supports Special Operations requirements and national security objectives. Williams consulted Samantha's personnel file with evident admiration for her operational record and professional performance. Wells, your combat experience, tactical knowledge, and demonstrated planning capabilities are exactly what we need for developing next-generation special operations procedures and training programs. The conversation revealed possibilities that Samantha hadn't considered during her 18 months of civilian administrative work. Her demonstrated expertise and unique background had attracted attention from JSOC leadership, who recognized the value of her experience for advancing special operations effectiveness. Your first option is return to SEAL team operations as a senior petty officer with training and mentoring responsibilities, Williams explained. Your second option is acceptance of a commission as a special operations planning officer with responsibilities for procedure development and inter-service coordination. Your third option is assignment to the SOCOM Innovation Center, where you would lead development of new training protocols and operational procedures. Samantha felt overwhelmed by the opportunity to return to meaningful military service after months of hiding her true capabilities and experience behind administrative duties. General Williams, I would be honored to return active duty in whatever capacity best serves the special operations community and utilizes my experience most effectively. Williams smiled warmly. Outstanding, Wells. Given your unique combination of operational and administrative experience, along with your demonstrated ability to work effectively across service boundaries, I'm recommending you for the planning officer position with a direct commission to lieutenant. Your expertise will help develop the procedures that keep future operators safe and successful. The commission represented not just a return to military service, but recognition of Samantha's expertise and potential for leadership within the special operations community. Her administrative experience had provided her with organizational knowledge that would enhance her effectiveness as a planning officer. 8 weeks later, Lieutenant Samantha Wells stood in the briefing room at Naval Amphibious Base Coronado, preparing to deliver her first presentation as a Special Operations Planning Officer with SEAL Team Development Command. The same hand signals that had revealed her identity at Fort Braxton were now the subject of improved training protocols that incorporated her operational experience and security recommendations. Her civilian administrative career was over, but her return to naval special warfare represented not just personal vindication, but also recognition that expertise must be utilized where it can make the greatest difference for operational effectiveness and personnel safety. The officers she now worked with as a professional colleague included many who had initially known her only as administrative support. Their interactions reflected newfound respect for her tactical knowledge, operational experience, and the professional competence she had demonstrated regardless of her assigned role. Colonel Patterson, who had transferred to a joint assignment at Coronado, approached Samantha with evident gratitude for her contributions to operational planning and procedure development. Lieutenant Wells, your insights into communication protocols have revolutionized how we approach extraction procedures. Your expertise has made our operations significantly safer and more effective. Samantha acknowledged the compliment while maintaining the professional humility that had marked her entire career. Colonel, improving operational safety and effectiveness is what we're all here to accomplish. My experience is only valuable when it contributes to better procedures and more successful missions. Morrison, who had been promoted following the success of his command's revised special operations protocols, also expresses appreciation for Samantha's contributions and his regret about initially underutilizing her capabilities. Lieutenant Wells, I owe you an apology for not recognizing your expertise during your administrative assignment. Your knowledge and experience have proven invaluable to our entire organization. Samantha's response reflected the grace and professionalism that had marked her transition between military and civilian service. General Morrison, my administrative assignment allowed me to understand operational planning from a different perspective and appreciate the importance of every person's contribution to mission success. That experience enhanced my ability to contribute to procedure development and organizational effectiveness. Major Chun, now working directly with Samantha on tactical communication development and training program enhancement, marveled at the transformation from secretary to planning officer. Lieutenant, your transition from administrative support to operational planning has been remarkable to witness. Your unique perspective has improved every aspect of our procedures and training programs. Samantha's story became legend within the special operations community as a reminder about the importance of recognizing expertise regardless of apparent position, and the reality that valuable capabilities can be found in unexpected places and positions. Her patient service as an administratively assigned secretary had prepared her for leadership responsibilities that required both operational knowledge and organizational understanding. The communication protocols that had revealed her identity were refined and improved based on her operational experience and security recommendations, leading to enhanced safety and effectiveness for SEAL operations worldwide. Her contributions to procedure development reflected the value of combining direct combat experience with systematic analysis and organizational perspective. Most importantly, Samantha had demonstrated that true professionals serve with excellence regardless of recognition or assignment. That expertise reveals itself when circumstances require extraordinary performance, and that the most valuable military personnel are often those who perform their duties with quiet competence while carrying knowledge that can enhance operations and save lives. Her civilian secretary's notebook, which had once contained meeting schedules and administrative details, now resided in her office as a reminder of service that had taught her patience, humility, and the importance of every person's contribution to military operations, regardless of their apparent role, official recognition, or public acknowledgement. The hand signal that had changed everything remained a symbol of the hidden expertise that supports special operations through knowledge and experience that can emerge when operational requirements demand immediate action, and professional competence that transcends official assignment, organizational hierarchy, or conventional expectations about where military expertise can be found.